So my name is Ivan Komušanac. I come from Brussels in Wind Europe, which is a trade association. So we represent all the turbine manufacturers, all the investors, all the bankers, whoever is involved in the wind sector, let's say ports as well. We represent them and we try to work with the policymakers all around Europe to have more wind energy and in general more renewables. I will not talk only about wind today, but I will just ask one question. Did anyone see in person a wind turbine here? Show of hands. Okay. A wind turbine, yeah. Yeah. Not on a photo, but actually went to a wind farm. Okay, less than 10 people. We're gonna come back to that. Starting off with some very easy pie chart on the EU level. This is the only number I'm gonna show. Don't worry about it. What could this mean? Well, there is a rule of thumb. It says 1/3 of CO2 emissions comes from transportation sector, 1/3 from the power sector, and 1/3 from, let's say, buildings and industry. Very similar story in energy demand. So the energy that we actually consume, it's basically like this. So the blue part is power. So the electricity we need for the iPhones, for lights, for everything that is being charged. 45%, this is data for 2016, for heating, and for transport, 31%. But if you, let's say, read the news, you will always read about the energy transition in the power sector. Why do we even try? Well, this is the keyword there in the top right corner for now. We see a lot more electrification, which is to come on a European level. Policymakers notice that if they want to achieve high shares of renewables, they have to electrify transport, so more electric vehicles. They have to electrify heating, and then all of that electricity they would get from renewables from the power sector. So these 24% are going to increase to some 55%, and that's why we are so focused on the power sector. Situation now, in the power sector we have some 30% of renewables, most of it coming from wind and hydro, followed by solar PV. 18% in the heating, coming from biomass mostly, and a mere 8% in transport. This is the one that's lagging the most and that's going to have the most work in the short run. Now, what's the situation in the EU? I'm going to come back. I know this is Southeast Europe, but it's very important to know the current situation in Europe because, after all of those Southeastern European countries are trying to become a member. So this happened in 2017. Swedes say no more greenhouse gas emissions at all by 2045. People thought, okay, it's the Swedes, they can say whatever they want, who knows what's going to happen. Then this year, really a lot of countries embraced this target of being carbon neutral. Most notably the UK. On the last day of Theresa May, she signed a bill saying they want to go, they're going to be the first economy, the first G7 economy to sign such a bill. Then other countries started following. Finland was even more optimistic, said 2035, that's in 16 years. France, 2050. We had a very good plan by the Irish, which is just an island, yet they have already 30% of their electricity covered by wind energy. And what's happening in Southeast Europe? Well, the complete opposite. You have lignite power plants in Kosovo, coal power plants in Bosnia, more coal power plants in Serbia. And I wanted to put Greece here, but there was one positive news from Greece. A couple of days ago, they announced they're going to completely abandon coal by 2028. So we do see that the EU countries are going in one way. Southeast European ones that are not in the EU are going a different way. But the EU is very clear on this. If you want to be a part of the EU, you have to go carbon neutral by 2050. Means what? Means no CO2 emissions, means no coal power plants by then, which means if you made such a huge infrastructure project next year, you would only have 30 years to use it. And coal power plants usually need 50 years, 40 years in order to generate really a significant amount of money. Meaning you're throwing away money. You're throwing away as if you're rich, as if you're Germany, but in fact you're Bosnia, you're Kosovo, you're Macedonia, you don't have that much money to spend. There was a report that came out last year from CAN Europe that basically shamed the Southeast Europe, the Western Balkans in particular, that 16 of their coal power plants pollute as much as 250 coal power plants in the European Union. Imagine. So just look at the difference, how much it is, yet when it comes to pollution, you pollute as much or even more when it comes to SO2 or PM2.5. PM2.5 is this very small particulate matter which you do not see, which goes in your nose and you have asthma problems. This is one of the reasons that kids in China now have cancer, and they are below 16 years, which was never occurred so far. Now, how do you get Southeast Europe policymakers on board on following this energy transition? Well, it's hard. It's very different when you have to work with policymakers on an EU level, so the European Commission level, who look at it on a global view, because the EU has a view that we should lead the energy transition. We should show to China, to India, to the US, to South America, that you can become cost-effectively a carbon-neutral society, and then the other will follow. This is the idea. But when you go to policymakers here, they don't really share the same enthusiasm. So there are a couple of things that you have to make sure. Policymakers look at job creation, additional value being generated through GDP, and employment. So what we did is, and the Croatians might know who this is the Croatian Minister of Energy and Environment. It's all about education. It's about organizing workshops, organizing roundtables, meeting with them, with all the different stakeholders who are involved in the energy process, and just showing them what renewables are. It's showing about how cost competitive they are, how cheap they are, what are the solutions. If, let's say, some people think if there's too much wind, the system is going to collapse, the grids are not going to be able to handle that. But again, you have to organize workshops. This was in Bilbao in April, where we organized a very big workshop on system integration of wind energy, where all the people from Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia, that are grid experts came all together. The minister was there, and we're talking about the potential of wind energy. So it basically comes to about education when you try to work with Southeastern European policymakers. And my message, what can you do here? Well, the Greta video was pretty much clear there. People who are the older generation, they made a lot of mistakes, but do not think that they will solve those mistakes. They are thinking that this generation is going to be the one that's going to solve. So be active, choose who you're going to vote for, go vote, be present in every of the climate march, because when we talk to policymakers, their argument is our voters don't care. But if their people demand, and if they're going on the streets every Friday, which is the situation in Germany, then they're forcing the governments to make a difference. So with that, I'm going to leave it to you. I didn't want to go too deep into discussions. I'm an engineer, but we can go and talk about the future energy system in Southeast Europe. But remember, you have to be active. You cannot leave it to someone else to take care of the air or the water you're going to have while living here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a quick question before we start getting the questions from the participants. Can we go 100%, can we transition 100% to the renewable energy? How much would that cost and how long would that take?
The cost part is it's a bit hard to...
Not for my country.
Yeah, not for your country.
No,
but
for the rest.
First of all, it's possible. We've seen countries, Costa Rica running 300 days in a row completely on renewable energy. Not talking about Switzerland here, talking about Costa Rica. So countries don't have a lot of money. The rule is if you have political will, you will do it. There are different solutions. You cannot really translate the same solutions you have, let's say, in Ireland. You cannot use them here. But because this region has so much hydropower already installed, you could use that hydropower plants to balance the intermittence of wind and solar. And those three together, they could end up being, let's say, 60% already renewable of the whole system. Then you have to bundle up this heating sector and the transportation sector. So if you have electric vehicles that during the night can also use their batteries to fluctuate, you have heating that works the same, you can achieve 90% of renewables. So this technology is already there. You just have to have the firm political commitment to go for it.
You think in Kosovo we can do this with 200 euro salary monthly? Buy electric car and put the solar panels and everything?
The question is what you do first.
Yeah.
And the first one is you start installing more renewables.
I'll go with vegetarian first and then come later to the solar panel.
And the thing is, the renewables create jobs.
Yes.
And that's this closed circle. You make a, what do you think how many people work in the wind industry in Europe?
Probably a lot.
350,000. And usually you get, let's say, if you have a very big project, you're going to have a couple of hundred, maybe 1,000 people working on that project. So that means a cleaner air through clean electricity, and you're going to have people working, which means they're going to have higher salaries. And then you just have to start this mill like the Danes did. So Danish people started with wind energy because they saw it as a strategic investment. And now they have very good paying jobs in developing of windmill products, and they don't have this problem now anymore of being poor.
What about, we have an interesting question about mini hydropower plants in the small rivers that we have in the Western Balkan countries. Is that doable?
Well, for a reason there is a strong debate, should that even count as renewable? Because for talking about power plants that are, let's say, 2 megawatts, which is half of a turbine currently, we're installing now, let's say if you just install one turbine, you can go as much as 10 megawatts. But you damage the ecosystem so much because you have to reroute the water and you do the construction works that sometimes it doesn't pay off. And why did we have so much hydro before? Well, before it was communism, so you could just force people to move out. And the same thing was in Italy during Mussolini's time. They would just force people to move away from the villages and they would make a very big hydropower plant there. But now when you really have to take care of the environment, it doesn't seem as the small hydro being the right solution.
Thank you very much.